Annie, here we go. We've got Annie Frisbie here, professional runner for Puma and a team run coach, 10th at the Olympic trials, Minnesota
Distance
distance
elite.
elite. Distance
Yep.
elite.
Yep.
Yep. And so we're just going to chat today a little bit about you, your running, things you've learned along the way, and maybe try and help out some of the runners and coaches on our team just so they can learn from your
Yeah.
experiences. Cool.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. That sounds great.
And I'm going to say the first question I'm going to start with is one that your buddy Dakota gave
Yeah.
me. So she sort of like
Okay.
prompted me. I was like, Dakota, what should I ask Annie about? And she said, you should ask her about her injuries. And I
Yeah,
don't, it might be like I don't know if it's a negative place to start, but it's a reality as being a runner. And I think
totally.
I don't know a ton of your history, but I know you have I think some history with bone injuries. And so those are not like minor injuries. So I would love to just hear like, tell us a little bit about that, like how you got through them, what you learned. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that would be a good place for us to start.
Yeah, definitely. I never really struggled with injury in college at all. Maybe some minor tendonitis, but nothing serious. But I had my first serious injury in 2021, I believe, or 2020, I believe. And it was a metatarsal stress fracture. And that one was just super out of the blue. It was so random. Was just going for a normal long run, and something all of a sudden just felt so painful in my foot. And I thought maybe I tied my shoe too tight or something. And it just wasn't getting better throughout the run. And then muscled through that long run, would not do that. If I could do that over again, I would have stopped immediately if I knew it was wrong. But as soon as I stopped that run, I took off my shoe and I could see that my foot was swelling like crazy, and I just never seen my foot look like that before. So I knew something was wrong. And I went in to get an MRI, and it was a complete fracture that time, which like I said, was out of nowhere. I didn't really have any pain signs leading up to it. So it was super confusing of kind of why that happened. And that one was kind of okay timing because it was during the pandemic. There just wasn't a lot of races going on, and I had just started a new job as a graphic designer, and so I was really just focused on that. And um, sometimes injuries can definitely be sort of just like a sad thing where it's like, oh, I don't have this thing, which is running, that gives me sort of an outlet. But that first injury, it was honestly perfect timing where I could just kind of immerse myself into my new graphic design job. And like I said, it was a pandemic, so there weren't a lot of races going on. So it was kind of best case scenario for a first serious injury. And then healed from that and ended up having an amazing rest of my 2021 season, and ran my first marathon and had a great race there. And I think I was just the healing process for that stress fracture. I was very patient with it. And I really just took a lot of time off, not even cross training, and then just slowly got back into it and really just didn't rush anything. And I think by the time that I did get back to running, I was just so appreciative to be healthy that every single run was just, a huge step forward, and every workout was a huge step forward. So by the time I got to racing, it had been so long that I was just excited to get back out there, and ended up having a great season. And then I would say I was fairly healthy from then until I got another stress reaction in 2022, right before the New York City marathon. And that one wasn't a full fracture. It was just like a more of a reaction, I would say, a stress reaction. But it was still enough to, call it a season, take some time off, and hit the refresh button. And thankfully, that one didn't take as long to heal from, just because it wasn't as severe. Um, but that one was a little harder because there were a lot of other races going on. The pandemic was kind of, races were opening up
Yeah.
again, and things were kind of back to normal. So definitely had a lot of that sort of FOMO of other people who were, racing well and healthy and all of that, and fully used to my job at that point, so wasn't really as focused on that. So that was kind of the first injury where I could understand how seeing other athletes just kind of get bogged down when they're injured. I think that was the first injury where I could really relate to that, and was just frustrated with the how slow progress is when you're getting back into shape. I think the first time around I was just okay with the progress being slow, and then the second time around it's like, all right, I'm ready to get back. I want to be at 100% fitness as soon as I can. But that's just not how injuries work. They're on their own timeline, and patience is always the best. But it's hard to tell yourself that. It's easy to tell someone else that, like, patience is key, but when it's yourself, you just want to get back out there. But yeah, I was able to get back out there, and my first sort of big race back. I did a few like minor 10Ks leading up to it, or I think I did the USATF 15K as well. But then first big race was the Boston Marathon, and I had never gone into a marathon knowing that I was probably only at like 60 or 70% fitness, which is definitely a scary place to go into a marathon, because personally, I would love to go into a marathon at least 90% fit. It's just such a grueling event. So I really wasn't sure how that was going to pan out, but it ended up being a solid day, and I definitely surprised myself. And I think that's true for a lot of races, that you're just not sure how it's going to pan out. Most of the time, you surprise yourself in a good way. Every once in a while, it's like, okay, it was not great, and that's kind of what I was expecting. But other times, you really do have more fitness in the bank than you think you do, at least from my personal experience. So that's kind of my injury history, I guess. And yeah, it's definitely not ideal to get a bone injury or tendonitis or any of those things. But I think if you're in the sport long enough, it's something small or big might pop up. And if I could tell myself anything, or any other athletes, it would just be patient with it, and try not to rush back.
So, and it's great advice. And as a coach, I would say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
In practice, when it happened the second time, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
you're in the middle of a build, you're supposed to race New York, and like New York is where you had your breakthrough the year before in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
In practice, how did you actually do it? How did you stay patient? Like, what did you tell yourself? Like, how did you get through that time? Did you cross train then? Like, I don't, how did you handle it? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't
how did it
actually
go?
officially find out that it was a stress reaction until after I raced the 2022 New York Marathon. I think I was honestly in total denial that something was wrong, and I was just trying to, pull out all the brain tricks that I was fine. It's just normal marathon training pain. It's probably just like some tendonitis. And it was weird. It was confusing because it would warm up on runs, which I didn't know that was actually a sign of a stress reaction, is it can warm up and feel better as you run sometimes, because that just wasn't my experience with the first time I broke my foot. It was pretty instant. But sometimes apparently it can warm up as you run. So I was just kind of in denial that it was an issue. And then well, during the marathon, I was really only able to use like 50% of my that side of my leg that it was on. And
Was
then
it on your foot, or where was this stress
it was on
reaction
my
at?
foot. Yeah, it was a
Okay.
different metatarsal on the same foot. So
Okay.
my left foot is just like it's definitely the lazy side for some reason, and I have to
Yeah.
do a lot of work to get that side just as strong. And I've definitely learned from that, to I'm definitely making sure I'm making that side stronger, and not letting the right side just always take over, because that's definitely its natural way of doing it. And yeah, after the marathon, I knew something was up. So ended up getting an MRI once I got back home and saw that it was a stress reaction or minor fracture, and started the recovery process from there. Mhm.
Yeah, well, I'm glad, I mean, it's kind of cool you're able to race and not do like terrible damage to it. So you still got the race, but like then
Yeah.
just a longer end of season. But then that transitions into the, you mentioned like the buildup coming back after the time off is
Hmm.
hard. And I think that this
Yeah.
is something that a lot of everyday runners will relate to. Like I know when I'm coaching people, they've had a lot of time off for whatever reason. The first 2, 3 weeks is like, usually it's like not fun running. It doesn't feel
Totally.
good. And
Yeah.
I imagine lots of people might think, no, not someone who runs 2:26 in the marathon. Like it must just always be easy for her. Like I would just
Definitely
like,
not.
what was it like coming back? Like how long did it take till you felt like you were back in your groove again? I don't know. How did you get through that? Especially
Yeah,
compared to where you've been as a runner.
totally. Yeah, it's definitely not easy getting back into shape. And kind of like you said, it's not necessarily fun either getting back into shape. It's fun once you kind of start to see the light of progress. You're like, okay, what I'm doing is working and I will get to the other side of this. But when you're just starting out, at least for me personally, it's really tough to see how eventually it's going to translate into feeling good again. But it always does. So just having that faith. But yeah, the first week or two honestly isn't too bad because after an injury, it's probably just easy running. And easy running is, you're just getting out the door. It's enjoyable. For me, at least, it's just listening to music or podcasts or something, trying to keep my heart rate as low as I can and just getting back into it, just remembering what regular running feels like after a long time off. But I would say it gets really tough once I start incorporating, or my coach starts incorporating workouts. And that typically at the beginning of a build when you're just coming back is moderates and progressions. And so it's just like a long, slow grind. And when I haven't been aerobically working out as often as I would when I'm fit, it's just really tough to come back. And those first few moderates and progression runs are just brutal. It just feels like you're going all out, even though it's so much slower than what you can do when you're actually fit. But like I said, eventually you do kind of start to come around and see that it is working, and I gradually get faster each workout. But the first probably a month of workouts, it's pretty difficult, and eventually it comes around, and just having that patience and trust that it will come around. But yeah, just trying to get through that first month, just kind of putting my head down and getting through it. It's really just about checking the box. It's really hard, but doesn't need to be anything flashy.
Yeah, just putting in the work. And
Putting in the
I
work,
think,
yeah.
yeah, I think it's good for people to hear that from you as a runner. And like, I think you probably know this as a coach, or I know this as a coach, where it's like,
Hmm.
yes, it's probably going to be like this. And if you can have the
Yeah,
expectations and, just kind of put your head down, do the work,
yeah.
then you're going to get to this point where it's like, it's not like it gets easy to do a threshold tempo workout or whatever, an
Hmm.
interval session. It's not
Yeah.
easy, but it's just like, it feels like you feel like you're on top of it more, like more in control of it. I feel like
Control, yeah.
what does it feel like when you're in shape and you have these workouts? What's the difference? I mean, that's a good way to like, yeah, I would love to hear like, how does it feel when you're in shape? Describe that.
Yeah, in shape, it definitely, like you said, control is a good word, where it's still very hard, but it feels like I have some sort of smoothness still, and I'm able to get through the workouts without completely emptying the tank, and just having control over my body and muscles. And but you also don't want to be kind of 100% fit for too early. And so a lot of the times our coach will have sort of different phases. Like I mentioned, that first base phase is where a lot of moderates and progressions happen. And then we start getting into the thick of it. And definitely once we get into the thick of training, I start to feel fitter, but you're also increasing mileage and intensity. So sometimes, just that fatigue, I don't necessarily feel good either, but I still feel better than that first phase. And then in that last phase where we're kind of focusing on sharpening, that's where I start to feel really good. And once we start to kind of bring back the mileage a little bit too, that's where I start to feel even better. But you don't want to do that too early either. So the window where I feel good is very small. But that's kind of how it's meant to be. And I think that makes racing so fun is you feel good for that little window and then you go back to the sort of grindy part of training.
Very cool, very cool.
Hmm.
You mentioned when you're starting out in those first weeks, easy runs, and you mentioned like just trying to keep your heart rate as low as possible.
Hmm.
Um, Lots of people talk about keeping easy runs easy. Like for
Hmm.
you, like tell me a little bit more about like your sort of philosophy and practice. Maybe it's from your coach, but like your way of approaching easy runs.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in keeping, for myself, I need to keep my easy runs easy. I think it's been the biggest game changer in helping my workouts and having the training for the marathon specifically be sustainable. I think I could probably get away with more when I was doing shorter races or on the track or back in college. I think I could get away with doing my easy runs quicker. But honestly, I started doing my easy runs really slow the first marathon build in 2021. And it was kind of out of necessity. I was just so fatigued. I was not used to the higher mileage, and I had to start my runs out so slow and then would gradually kind of warm up throughout the run. And since then, I've just sort of carried that with me every marathon build. And I just go out there with the mindset of it's really just about checking off the miles today. I'm not trying to do anything specific. I have no pace that I'm necessarily trying to hit. If it's super slow and I warm up, great. If it's super slow the whole time, that's fine. If I feel good one day and I'm picking it up a little bit, but I just don't put any sort of expectation on those runs because I go into workouts with an expectation. I want to hit a certain pace or long runs, I go into it wanting to hit a certain pace. And so those are the days where I want to be more, I want to be more conscious of the paces I'm doing. And I think it helps the training be sustainable for me if I just don't have any expectations for my easy days and just go out there and just, soak in the run and just enjoy being out there with, nature, music, podcasts, and just, like I said, sort of checking off those miles.
That's really good. And I mean, you said you got to that point out of necessity during the marathon build. I'm thinking of like everyday runners and like they tend to run their easy days too fast. It's like, how do you get through to them that there's just like there's no pace that's too slow on those days most of the time, I would imagine. Like it's about keeping your heart rate low and checking the box, getting your miles. But like
Mm-hmm.
any other pointers on like how someone could get there, or like how someone could be like, oh no, like I never run this slow. Like some people just like have these roadblocks in their minds about like, well, I don't go that slow, whatever it may be. Like, do you have any, what could you say to
Yeah,
someone who thinks of it that way?
I guess it's not even about paces because I know a lot of other runners that do their easy runs quicker, but they feel good and they're still able to keep their heart rate lower. So it's more about effort, I would say. And so that can, for me, that just varies day to day. Like if I had a workout the day before, um, a faster pace is going to be a lot harder on an easy run the next day. So those are the days, the day after workout, those are the days where typically are the slowest for me. But I think, I mean, if I look back at myself in college, I remember people telling me that, or even the first few years after college, people telling me like, take your easy runs slower. Cause I used to do them faster because I just, felt good on them. And that pace felt natural, but I think it probably, if I do look back, it probably did hinder my workouts a little bit, but I think I needed to almost experience it for myself. And with that first marathon build, like I said, it just happened out of, out of necessity. And I think I just needed to learn that for myself. And I'm sure a lot of other runners are like that too. People can tell you something or give you advice, but until you kind of see it for yourself, it's like, okay, now I understand what people meant. Sometimes it's hard to take advice with when you don't kind of understand where it's coming from.
Totally. And again, sometimes you just have to experience it.
Yeah,
It's taken
yeah,
me many years to get to where I run my easy runs. I
yes,
don't care what the pace is. Like I'm listening to my
totally.
podcast and I'm just whatever feels comfortable.
Yep, yeah. It's everyone's on a different journey to get there.
Yeah, very cool. Speaking of journeys, I'm really curious, like you had a successful high school career, you ran D1 in college. You weren't like the fastest in D1. I mean, you were fast,
No,
but like
yeah.
you weren't, like national
No,
champion or anything.
definitely not the fastest. Yeah.
How did you like how did you decide to keep going on the journey? How did you believe in yourself? Like, what did you say to yourself when you joined the Minnesota Elite Project in September of 2019 that made you think I can be a pro runner? And like, how did you stay with it through all of it? I'm just curious, like mentally, how the journey went for you.
Yeah, it kind of worked out perfectly with Minnesota Distance Elite because I was sort of deciding what I wanted to do after college and was talking to a few different teams, but definitely not at a level where I would be able to get a ton of support. Like I knew I wasn't going to be getting my own individual shoe contract or anything like that. So it was I was looking at more team focused across the country, and yeah, Minnesota Distance Elite was kind of the perfect fit because they also allow their athletes to work a regular job if they would like. And that definitely wasn't the case with all of the teams that I was looking at. And I graduated with a degree in graphic design, and I knew I wanted to use that. And I knew I also wasn't at the level where, like I said, to get a shoe contract right out of college. And so for me, I really didn't want the financial burden or financial stress of just focusing on running and just trying to make it. I just didn't want that stress. So I knew I wanted to work alongside my running career and just kind of see where it took me. I think I had big goals for myself, but right out of college, I didn't quite realize them. I just was very naive to what the pro running scene even was. I didn't quite understand the USATF road circuit. I just didn't really know much, I would say. And so after my first year was used to it and kind of understood how it worked and was able to kind of lay out a better plan of, okay, these are the races I'm going to do and this is the path forward to reach my goals. But yeah, I really liked the ability to work alongside, just to be able to support myself and not have that extra stress. And then when I was able to have sort of a breakout race and get a shoe sponsor, then I was able to step away from working, which was awesome. But I don't think I would have necessarily gotten to that level had I not been working and had that extra stress on my shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of you mitigated some of the risk in a sense. You
Hmm.
said, I'm gonna keep running. Like I want to keep running. I want to see where it can take me. I don't know where it's gonna take me,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm also not gonna bet everything on it. I'm gonna get a job and make some, make
Hmm.
sure I can pay my bills and not be worried about it.
Yeah.
That's super cool because yeah, and then you with Minnesota Distance Elite, then you had a team like a support system, right? Like, do you guys all
Yeah.
train together? Do you rate like practice together, race together? Like, how does it work as a? I don't think most adults know what it's like to be on a team after like
Totally.
high school. What's it
Yeah,
like?
no. Yeah, we train together 3 times a week. We meet for workout days and then long run days, which is perfect. because then those easy days, people can just kind of get them done whenever they want to on their own. Because, like I said, a lot of us do work other jobs as well. So it's just easier for schedule wise. But yeah, our team, we have a bunch of local sponsors, so we get support through that. And we have anyone ranging from 800 meters all the way up to the marathon. So we have quite the range and just quite the mix of personalities too. And I think it kind of, we all sort of balance each other out, and it's just a great group of people to train with. It's definitely just I feel like we are all very supportive of each other, and we're definitely not all doing the same races. I think that was a unique thing about the Olympic trials this year is we had 7 athletes, I believe, racing the Olympic trials marathon, and that's probably the most of my teammates I've ever raced with. Otherwise, it's kind of like scattered throughout. Sometimes I'll go to a race alone, and then other times I'll have 3 of my teammates with me. And we also have some track people, and I'm not on the track, so they're off doing track races. So we're a little bit all over the place, but it is cool when we're able to come together, specifically for the marathon, and line up for those key workouts and long runs. But it's different every year and every season, I would say.
That's so cool that you have that like built-in support net. And
Yeah,
specifically, I think you and Dakota are buddies. Like,
totally. Yeah,
tell me a
she's a
little about what
great
it was
training
like to
partner.
prepare for the trials together. Like, I just think what you two did is just so cool. So, like, just tell me a little bit about your build up to the Olympic trials.
Yeah, so Dakota went down a little bit earlier than me, but we are both down in Orlando area, Florida, from early December up until the trials in early February. And we just wanted to get some warm weather and acclimate because the race was in Orlando. And we rented an Airbnb together, and we brought our dogs down, and we just ran from our Airbnb or found some fun trails. And we don't necessarily line up on easy days. I think Dakota likes to do her easy runs a little bit quicker than me, so we typically do our easy days separate, but then we would come together for workout and long run days. And it was so awesome. I think we were both probably in some of the best shapes of our lives. So I think it was just fun to kind of line up like that too, because a lot of times it's tough to line up perfectly fitness wise, um, for a build. I think sometimes there's seasons where one person is fitter than the other, and you kind of line up, but not on everything. And Dakota and I, we definitely balance each other out on. We have different strengths and weaknesses, I would say, and so Dakota's strengths are really the longer long runs and the longer workouts. She's just so aerobically, she's just such an animal. And so I'm more of a speedster. And so my strength is more on the track and doing some shorter reps. And so we kind of pull each other along depending on the workout. And for the marathon, she pulls me along a lot more than I pull her along, I think, because we're just doing so many marathon workouts. And but this buildup was fun because just we're able to do so much more than we have in the past. I know Dakota raised her mileage. I didn't necessarily raise my mileage, but I was doing longer workouts than I had ever done before and finishing them well. And so that was a huge confidence boost. And I think we're both just we're obviously competitive people, but it's not necessarily competitive in practice, which is great. And we both just try to bring our best selves to practice and a good attitude, and try to have a positive outlook on the workout. And I think we both were just very excited about every workout and long run because we could kind of feel the momentum building. And when that happens, it's just hard not to enjoy the runs and the workouts. But yeah, she's such a fun person to train with, and it was great that not only aligned with her, but then we had some of our other teammates come down in January. And so it really felt like regular practice for this buildup, which was awesome, and was able to keep our spirits, light and going into the race feeling good.
I can't help myself, but the old guy in me wants to be like, remember these moments, Annie. Like
Yeah, oh, I
when I
know.
think back on all of my
I
running,
know.
the best memories are like when I had a really good build with a buddy. Like I did
Yeah,
Boston a few
yeah,
years ago, and like me and my buddy Andrew, like we did all the training
yes,
together, and it was just like that time together, doing all the work together, where we were just
yeah,
like in shape at the same time. It was like it's one
yeah,
of the things I remember most about my running is those times with the people
totally.
I train with. So that's
Yeah,
super
and
cool.
I think this was one of those builds where I was able to realize it in the moment. I think just realizing how rough winters can be in Minneapolis sometimes, I think we were both very aware of how cool this opportunity was and how awesome it was to do all of our workouts outside and enjoy some warmer days. I know, especially for me, like on my easy days, I just was so grateful for every run. And we were both healthy, which is also, that's just not the case for every build. So I think we both just went into the build with a lot of gratitude. And I think when we look back on it, it was definitely a fun journey, and I'm sure I will remember it for years to come.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned like gratitude and positive, like positive mindset going into workouts. Do you have any sort of like what's your self-talk like, whether it's like before a workout, during a race, like how do you keep your mind in the right place? This you go either way with this, right? Like during a
Yeah.
race, like staying focused and staying positive, or even just like day to day, so that when it's time for a hard workout, especially when you're like, this is when Dakota is like gonna pull me, this is a long one. You're like, how do you
Yeah.
go in with the right, like what's your strategy for having the right mindset to do these hard things?
Yeah, it can be tough, and I think it depends on the day. Like there's some days where you have more on the tank mentally and you're just able to go ride those waves. And then there's some days where you're just like a little off balance or something kind of bothered you before, like something's just off sometimes where things can knock you a little easier in workouts. But I think I try to just have positive self-talk. I think that is something that can sort of be a fake it till you make it. It feels phony sometimes, especially when you're feeling like garbage. It's kind of like, okay, I'm talking positive to myself, but I know I'm lying to myself, but it does help. And I know like Dakota has taught me a lot about the power of just like smiling, especially in races, but like in workouts too. If you uh, probably don't feel like smiling, but if you just put a little grin on, sometimes you feel a little better. And so maybe doing that. But going into a workout too, I think the last few years I've been a lot better at going into it. Either just not thinking about it at all, so I don't overthink it, or going into it almost excited or curious how it's going to go, rather than going into it of like, oh, this is going to be so hard or dreading it or anything like that. I think with me just having a few injuries, I've just been able to sort of shed that any sort of dread going into workouts. If anything, of course, I know it's going to be hard, but at the same time, even if it's a mediocre workout, I've learned that that's still fitness in the bank, and you can still take a lot from that. Or even a bad race, it's still fitness in the bank, and you can move forward with that, knowing you'll be better the next time around. And so I think honestly, my injuries have helped me in that way of just having a little bit more perspective on, it can go away pretty quickly. So going into the workouts with a looking forward to it mindset, or just with an open mind too, because you never know how you're going to feel. There's been several workouts where I feel like I might be feeling off, like, oh, maybe I have a little bit of a minor tendonitis or just feel not great that day. But then, halfway through the workout, it can turn around and you'll have a really solid day. So you just never know how a workout or race is going to go. And that's something I'm still learning, I would say. But I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last few years.
Yeah, I can recall lots of times where even in the warm up, like, oh, I just do not feel it today. This is going to be
Totally.
fun. finish
Yes,
the
yeah.
warm up, do some drills, get myself ready, and then I start the workout. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah, it's
I'm
fine.
like in this workout. Like I'm good to
Right.
go. And it suddenly it's just like
Yeah.
the flip switch. So yeah, like I've
Yeah.
learned the same thing. Like you just go in and do the work. And even if it's not you didn't nail it, as long as you did the work and like showed up,
Yeah.
like, yeah, as you said, it's fitness in the bank.
Totally. Yeah. And I've been there too where yeah, the warm up feels absolutely terrible. And then you go into it being like, all right, this is gonna be an off day, but then you go and surprise yourself. And I almost wonder if that's just the mind's way of sort of taking off the pressure from a workout a
Yeah.
little bit. Because that's always how it goes, is you always feel better in the workout than you do in the warm up.
Yeah, it's wonderful when you just get into it, you finally start, and you're in the zone. Yeah, it's a good place
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah.
Um, I have a few more just sort of like logistics or faster type of questions I want to ask because a lot
Yeah.
of runners want to know this kind of stuff. Like, for example, fueling.
Mhm.
We could talk about it, fueling in two ways. One, like during the race, I'm very interested specifically in like, do you pay attention to the calories, the hydration? Like, are you like, how do you approach that? And then even just in general, like nutrition and like how you view fueling during a training cycle. I think both of those are things that runners would love to know about and would benefit hearing your approach.
Yeah, I'm definitely still learning that too. It's I think every marathon I've done has been a huge learning experience in what feels good and what I'm able to what gives me energy in a race and throughout the build too, of course. But for me personally, the first marathon I did, I sort of just like picked a brand and I it worked once in practice. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna use that in the race. And it worked out in the race. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna use that for every race.
What was it? What did
But
you use?
I use Morton drink mix with I use some of the caffeinated one and then I use some of the regular one and
Okay.
I would mix them together in the bottles. And I think I had like 7 or 8 bottles, I want to say.
Okay.
Um, and so that worked for that first race. So I didn't question it. I was like, all right, I'm going to use that here, from here on out. But then in the next race, it was that New York 2022, and it was super hot that year. And the Morton drink mix, I just mixed it way too concentrated. So it was too thick. And in the hotter weather, I just needed I needed more water in the ratio. And so I did not feel good with that. But I kind of just pushed forward. I was like, all right, I'm still going to use it because I'm going to give it another shot. So I used it again in Boston and I also used it at Berlin this last fall. And it's like okay, but I didn't necessarily get excited for my bottles. I know my teammate Dakota, she's mentioned that she knows her fuel is working when she actually gets excited to reach her bottles and actually drink it. And I did not relate to that at all because I was not looking forward to my bottles because it was I don't know, it just wasn't going down easy and I wasn't feeling good at the end of my races. So after Berlin this year, I was like, all right, I know it's not working anymore. I need to switch it up and find something new. Um, so I literally just copied what Dakota did and I did Tailwind and some LMNT in each of my bottles. And that worked great. I had tried it a few times in practice and I already knew that just from practice that it was feeling so much better and I actually was looking forward to my bottles. And then in the race too, it did feel good and I felt like with those electrolytes and then the tailwind mix to it, like when you mix it, it's just not as thick, so it just goes down easier for me. And so I really kind of found that worked well, and hopefully it'll work in the next marathon
For
I
the
do.
next
And
one,
I
yeah.
know maybe it won't, we'll see. But for now, I think that seems like a good solution. And but yeah, it's kind of been trial and error. I'm not super scientific about it. I know some athletes really know like the ins and outs of the science behind what you need. For me, it's more like, all right, I'm going to try it in practice. see how it feels, and then we'll go based off of that. Um, and then for just general fueling, I feel like it's kind of like going with the ebb and flow of your hunger cues. And I think that, fluctuates with how many mileage you're doing, how much mileage I'm doing. And definitely in those higher mileage weeks, not only the week of, but even like the several weeks after, I'm just, you're just so much hungrier and you
Yeah.
need so many more calories. And so just listening to that and just making sure I'm getting enough. And I think there's still been times where I probably haven't gotten enough. And so just learning that, there's maybe not, there's no such thing as too much, especially in those higher mileage weeks. And, when I am able to take in enough, then obviously feel so much better in workouts and able to really get through those heftier weeks. Still fatigued, of course, because it's just a lot of mileage. But when you get the feeling right, it does feel a lot better.
It's refreshing to hear that. I feel like it's been like a more like talked about thing in running in the past few years. It's just like, if you're gonna do the work, you've got to fuel and you've got to
Totally,
eat.
yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
it, to not break down and to stay with it year after year. Yeah, I think it's a really important thing.
yeah,
Um,
100%.
all right, I just have a few like shorter questions. Like,
Okay,
this is still a fueling question, but they're more like the rapid fire, like race
okay,
day before your marathon. And maybe this has
yes.
changed with all of your different marathons, but like, what do you eat the morning of your marathon before the
The mo
race?
Pretty much every race is the same for me. I've done a peanut butter bagel pretty much every race with banana, maybe some maybe some eggs. Usually have some coffee, but nothing too crazy. It's just, yeah, typically bagel, banana,
And
coffee.
like,
Those are for sure. I'm gonna have that. And then if they don't have those things, I'll improvise, I guess. But usually the race has those.
yeah, and like, how long before the start of the race do you have that?
I like to have it as long as it's not too early, like 3 or 4 hours out, and then maybe right before the race, have something, maybe like a part of a gel or part of a drink mix, just to kind of prime my stomach for when I am actually taking in the bottles. But for like a heartier breakfast, I like to have it like 3 or 4 hours out.
Do you have any music that you listen to before a race? Do you have like songs that you like to hear, or before like a big workout day? Do you Yeah, I know I have certain music I like to listen to that just like gets me in the right frame of mind to go do what I'm gonna go do. Do you have something like that?
Um, on the way to practice, I do like, the thing is, I don't really need to get pumped up. It's more like I really love listening to calm music actually, or even like maybe a little sad music on the drive in, and then I'm, just relaxed going into the workout, I guess. But before races, I don't really listen to music. Maybe I'll have my AirPods in, but I'm probably not listening to anything, or maybe I'm watching TikTok. I don't know, but I'm not really a music listener. I don't know why. I just haven't. It's never really been in my routine, and so I will, if I'm working out by myself or if I'm going for an easy run. I love listening to music or podcasts, but pre-race, I I don't really listen to anything.
Calm and in your own head
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
works. I love it.
yep. Just feel the nerves.
Yeah, just be there, ready. You don't need to be distracted. Just be in it, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And then thinking about training, I would love to hear, do you have like a favorite marathon workout? Like what, and this could be, you could think of this two ways, like this is the one that's like I just know does the most for me, even if I don't really like it, or like if there's one that I just love doing that workout. I'm curious, like, do you have a favorite?
Uh, Marathon specific workouts, I would not say I love any of them, but I do I know I do notice the benefit I get from them, but I would not say I love any of them. I love track workouts and I love like the sharpening stage where we're able to do those shorter reps. Like for me, those I love. Those are fun.
Yeah.
For the marathon workouts, for me, it's uh, they're really a grind for me, honestly. And so once I finished them, I'm like, okay, that was awesome that I finished it. And I kind of can look back on it like, okay, that wasn't actually that bad. It was kind of fun. But I don't think I'm necessarily thinking it's ever fun in a way.
Yeah.
But I do, those are the biggest ones that I notice the fitness gains from. And so they're definitely the most important. And for me, some of those staples are, we have this fartlek that our coach gives us. It's 3 on and then 2 float. And the 3 minutes on is faster than marathon pace, and the 2 float is slightly slower than marathon pace. And so you're never really recovering. You're always going at a faster clip, but it's just shifting paces. And we do those from anywhere from 45 minutes to 90 minutes. And the 90-minute one is definitely very tough, but getting through it, I just know that I gained so much from it. And then also just long runs, even if it's not like a ridiculously fast long run, just doing like a 26 or 27-mile long run, just knowing I can cover the distance and just getting through it and practicing fueling. I also feel like I get a ton of gain from that as well.
Nice. And what does one of the like the sharpening track workouts look like? What's an example of one of those that you would do that you like?
That I mean, I love mile repeats. I love 400s. I love 1200s Ks. We had a
What sort of
800
effort are you
meter.
doing, like the miles or the 400 at? Are they like
I feel
5K
like we
effort,
do
10K
a
effort?
lot
Like
of,
where do you put them?
yeah, yeah. So we do a lot of threshold effort, and that obviously changes based off the distance. But for it depends on the day. Like a lot of the times it'll be threshold, but then as we're getting into the more sharpening, it can sometimes go into 10K, 5K, and then for shorter reps, maybe like a 200, it's mile pace.
Yeah,
But yeah, it just depends on the day. But I feel like we touch threshold pace the most.
yeah. Which makes sense. I mean, given the marathon distance. So, and
Yep.
that's, as
Yeah.
you said, that's the stuff that's a grind, and you just get you're in it when you're in it.
Yes. Yeah. Long road ahead. Yep.
But that's how you get strong at the marathon. I
It
love it.
is. It is.
Okay,
Yeah.
last thing I wanted to ask you about. Your season looking ahead. You were 10th at the trials in the marathon.
Yes.
What someone tipped me off that you have a very unique or interesting racing schedule coming up. So what are you planning? Like, yeah, tell me about what's ahead for you.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to do something different, now that the Olympic trials are over for the marathon, I kind of have a blank slate for the next 4 years. So I figured I might as well mix things up a little bit. I really just wanted to hit the USATF road circuit as much as I could. And thankfully, my schedule kind of has allowed me to do that. So I just raced the USATF 15K championships, and then I'm going to be doing the USATF 10-mile championships in a couple weeks in DC. And then I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do the USATF road mile in Des Moines. So that'll be, I haven't raced a mile since I think my junior year of college on the indoor track.
Yeah,
So it'll be, I will not necessarily fit in there, but I just wanted to sort of mix up the stimulus. And I asked my coach if he thought that would be a good idea. And he thought, yeah, might as well mix things up. There's no pressure on it or anything. It's something that's fun, and it's not too far of a drive. So, why not? So gonna do that. I'm gonna do pretty much all of the USATF races. So I think after that, it's the 25K, I believe, and then the 20K and 10K. And I think the only one that I'm probably not going to make is the 6K. But I think I'm going to try to make all of the other ones. And then I probably won't race a marathon until next fall. I'm not sure which one that'll be, but hopefully, one of the world marathon majors. And then I think the only other well, yeah, I guess I do have a few other non-USATF races that I want to do. I think I'm going to do the grandma's half, and then I think I'm going to do a few 10Ks in the summer. I feel like the summer is just such a good time for that 10K distance. And I feel like I get so much strength from those and touch the speed a little bit more too. So definitely have a full schedule, but for me, when I'm feeling good, racing is kind of the most fun part, and the traveling is the most fun part. So I'm really excited to have a full schedule.
Awesome. Well, good
Yeah.
luck with all of it. I love that you're mixing it up after
Yeah.
being one of the fastest marathoners in America. Now you're going to go race the mile. I love that.
Yeah.
That's
We'll see. We'll
cool.
see what we can do.
Awesome. Well, I am very thankful that you took the time to talk today. I think you shared a ton of valuable information that runners of all abilities can learn from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we wish you luck in all of your racing and in your coaching. Like I know
Thank you.
as
Yeah.
you go through and learn these things, as you work with a great coach and you learn things, you're able to then pass it on to runners and help
Totally.
others have a cool experience. So
Yeah.
I will link information about you and your coaching in the video about this, and so if people want
Awesome.
to out you, they can do that. Are there any
Perfect.
other places that people, if they want to follow your journey, where should they follow you?
Yeah, I feel like I'm the most active on Instagram. My
Mhm.
username is at Annie Frisbie. Or you
Okay,
can just look up Annie Frisbee and I'm
I
sure
like
I'll
it.
pop
We'll make
up
sure we put a
somewhere.
link in here too. Yeah,
Yeah. But I'm not really active on other social platforms, I would say. So follow along there, I guess, if you're interested.
cool. Yeah. Thank you very much, Annie. And yeah,
Yeah,
we'll,
thank
we'll
you.
follow along and be excited to see how you do this year.
Awesome. Thanks for having